Okay, so I'm going to use the just the warm grey one again, just to come in and just smooth out some of those areas a little bit. And then just start to pick out the little bits of detail. And because you've built all of the layers up and then sort of taken away and you've been left with shapes, you're now able to just fill in little parts of the shapes, and that's what gives you the look of fur sitting over the top of fur. So it's really important to get those little sort of shapes in, and they're quite random, so they're not prescribed shapes at all, and that's what makes the hair look realistic. So now you can start to add shading and, moulding the ear so that it looks 3D. And you can start adding a little bit of colour as well. So I'm just going to add a bit of the terracotta, really, 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 really gently, just as a glaze. And when I talk about a glaze, literally just such a light layer over the top of the others, so it's almost like you can't see it, but it just enhances it just that tiny little bit. So when you look at it, you're not going to go, oh, that's, there's a blob of orange there. It's not discernible really, you can't really see it, but it's there and it just enhances it. I do that a lot with my black, if I'm drawing black animals, I do that a lot in areas of highlight. Just adding just a soft wash of colour or a glaze of colour can really make a big difference. It's very subtle. So I'm just adding it into the areas here. If the colour goes on too strongly, you can either lift out, or you can tone it back with like a warm grey, or maybe add a little bit of yellow ochre or something like that, just to tone it back a bit. But for me, you know, just layering over the top of it, and it'll just give extra depth. We all see colour differently anyway, and you know, a change in lighting and you get completely different colours. So I'm not, I don't mind if colours are slightly changed. Okay, so I've got a warm grey 3 here. I'm just going to just going to lift out a little bit of this. Right, so I'm going to use the slice tool now. One thing you've got to be careful of when you're using the slice tool as well is that it obviously brings up quite a bit of dust from the pencil, the pigment that it's lifting off. So just be careful that it doesn't smudge your drawing. I tend to blow it off, so you know, just blow it off the paper. So just be, you know, careful. So I'm just going in and I'm just lifting out little areas. I'm going very, very lightly. So what I don't want it to look like is that somebody's taken a scalpel and just scratched bits of lines in. I want this to look like it's, you know, part of the drawing. So that's why I'm being very, very careful to make sure that they're not just scratchy marks. And that's why I quite like this particular blade, because it's rounded and it's not sort of like a really sharp point. So you're getting the nice softness, but with a little bit more control. And if you need to make some lighter than others, just increase your pressure slightly, and you will get, you'll pick out more of the pigment. This really is a great tool for creating fur, but using it with varying pressure. And you get some really nice shapes going on that you can then, so you're making these shapes, you can then go in with your pencil and start to build in you know, more shadow and more detail as you've been creating these little shapes. And because you're going in so carefully, it's not actually damaging the surface of the paper, so you could go back in and draw over the top. You might have a bit of an indentation, but nothing like you would if you were using sort of, you know, actually scratching the surface of the paper. So it's almost like drawing with a white pencil over the top of what you've got, and because it's such a rounded blade and you can use it like a pencil, you get quite precise marks. Something else to be careful of as well, if you are scraping from a dark area into a light, you might end up with, so if I was scraping out this bit here and I wanted to scrape out the fur to nothing, can you see how that's kind of blended? It's scraped a little bit off, but it's also pulled the pigment up, so that's something to be careful of. If you don't want that, you know, just be careful to lift it as soon as it happens. I think because it's not a specific sharp blade and you're not using it with massive pressure, it can blend the pencil as well. It can just sort of move the pigment on the paper, which actually you can get some nice effects doing that, but just be aware that's what it does. So this is the retractable slice tool, and I did try it just by holding the this down, but you can't sustain it for long. It's which is why I've put a piece of tape around it to keep the blade, so it stays out all of the time. Okay, might just have to put a touch of colour in here just to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. We use the yellow ochre. This is a light fast yellow ochre that I'm just going to use very lightly, just laying down this bit of fur here. Some right, okay, that's enough scraping for now. Is that warm grey gone? It's warm grey 4. That's warm grey 3. Okay, so we'll use the warm grey 4 and just So you can see how I can fill in these little areas that are scratched out. So just blend in this area here, just so it's not looking so liney. I don't want it to look like it's got stripes. So just using light circular movements with the pencil just sort of blends them in a little bit. that's all starting to look quite nice. So I'm going to use might use a bit of bright orange just in the gaps. So it's hardly discernible, but it makes a massive difference. Okay, I'm just going to blend this a little bit as well. I'm looking for real softness in the fur. And yes, I want to see some individual strands of the fur, but there's a fine line between individual strands and stripy fur, and I'm aiming for a real softness. Go a little bit darker here. So let's just pop in with a warm grey some of these fluffy bits here. At least I know where they're going to sit. I wonder what will happen if... Let's just give it a go using the slice tool, just see if it will actually pull off. Not really. So you'd have to dig quite hard to be able to get that that awful graphite off. There's a pain in the bottom, is that? Right, what are we going to look at? I'm going to put some, I think we're going to go, let's go warm brown and okay, so I'm just going to put some of the colours in here, and it's a real mishmash of colours. So I'm going to put some of this walnut brown in here, where this darkest area is. Kind of following the shapes round, and it's a very loose, sketchy feel to the pencil. There's no sort of prescribed marks going on. It's all very sketchy, just sort of blocking in areas of colour. We can go quite dark here. I don't want to ruin the eye. And I will come in and darken this area up a bit. I'll use the Caput Mortuum Violet just to give it a bit more of a richer feel, and then we can put a bit of black in there as well, just to really deepen it. So instead of going in really heavy to get a dark, I'm just going in lightly and just layering it up. We can increase the pressure once we've got a few layers down of colour. And then just pulling the hair out here. This is that yellow ochre bit, but there are some sort of browny bits in there as well, and then it goes into some mad curls. So we've got take the Caput Mortuum Violet into here as well, just to add some more richness into that area there. So just using different sort of orangey tones. So there's the cadmium orange, which is the bright, and I'm using the burnt sienna now. So this is quite a deep crevicey bit in the side of the ear. So I just need to lighten this area up in a second. Right, and then we'll just use warm grey 2 just to blend some of those areas together. Right, so now I'm going to start to add in a little bit more texture down here where these soft curly bits are. I'm using the warm grey and I'm just putting a curly base in, if you like. So all I'm doing is I've got a blunt pencil and I'm just sort of dabbing in curls. So I've just scribbled on another sheet of paper to get a flatter point, as I don't want sharp edges in here at all. I don't want a sharp point in here, and I'm just going to go in again where I've put in the or tried to put in the kind of curl shapes with the warm grey 2. I'm going in again here with the warm grey 4, and just darkening up some of those areas. But I want the softness that I can get with the blunt pencil, rather than a really sharp edge. I want that nice soft feel. Okay, so there's some nice curly bits starting to appear here. Take a piece of scotch tape and a sharp pencil. Cover up that eye a little bit, and start to just pull out some curly shapes. At this point, with there only being a couple of layers down in this area, the shapes are quite sharp, but that's okay. We can soften them off. So they're just quite sort of randomly little sort of they're almost like inverted commas, apostrophes maybe, that, you know, that sort of shape, a rounded end. I can just pull bits into here as well. Put a couple of oops, stray. Yeah, careful you don't go off the edge of the tape and give yourself a nice orange mark. That's not to be advised. Right, okay. So you can see you've got some nice shapes going on there, and then what we do is we just come in and start to work around the shapes and put in some shadow detail. What we're not doing is outlining these, because then it's just going to look weird. But we're just making a start on adding the darker shadows, and it's going to be darker down at the bottom because obviously it's close to the head, and we've got some shadowing and what have you. So we can darken all this up down here. And if we need to we can take the shapes out again, you know, just to pull out the highlight, or we can use the knife, the slice tool. Okay, so those furry bits are starting to come now. So it's just now a case of starting to build up the tonal values within these little areas, the highlights, and you'll see as I go along I pull little bits out, add bits in. still with quite a blunt pencil, because I want that softness. I will add use a sharper pencil a little bit later on, once I've got a bit more of the tonal values in. I'm just gonna. This is the dark sepia that I'm using, and I'm just putting just a little bit of this grey in here. This is actually, even though it's got the other ear next to it, this bit here is actually in light, in sunshine. This bit here is all shadow, but this is a light area which I want to kind of portray. So I'm just going to use the Scotch tape again. So I need to add dark areas here. So you can see how I'm just slowly starting to build the depth into this area here where there are these specific little curls. And just building the layers. The dark sepia again. Just darken up this bit here. And then I'm going to use the warm grey too, just to smooth that out. So I need to go need to go in a little bit darker in here, and then I'm going to start pulling out a few stray hairs, so I've got some more shapes that I can fill, which will make it easier for me. Right, so coming in with the slice tool, and I'm just going to start just adding a few more targeted highlights rather than the softer, sort of more random ones that I've done with the Scotch tape. And again, I'm using this very, very gently. I'm not cutting the paper at all. I'm not slicing the paper. If I wanted to, I could put pencil back over the top, because I'm hopefully not using it this gently. I'm not damaging the paper. I might just stick that down a little bit, actually. So hopefully you can see that this is now starting to come together quite nicely. Right, I'm just going to sharpen with black. Okay, so I'm just going to come here and just sharpen up some areas. I don't want it too sharp, but I do need some areas to be a little bit more pronounced than others. So I'm just sort of touching the pencil to the paper really, and just making sort of like little marks. So that's starting to build some quite nice depth there. I'm going to actually use the Luminance Violet Grey, which is a really, really, really beautiful grey. And it's a really lovely soft grey, and it'll be nice. I want to keep these white highlights, but the part of these little fluffy bits obviously kind of curl round and go into the background, so I'm going to use the violet grey just to do the base bits of the highlights, and the kind of in-betweeny bits, just so they've got a tone. We'll come back again with the slice tool and just pinch out some of the areas that you want to keep a brighter white. Okay, and I'm going to use this grey actually in and around here. What it will do is it will smooth it. You'll still be able to see the texture of the paper underneath, which I want, because of that lovely texture of the donkey's hair coming out of his ears. But the Luminance will just kind of smooth the Polychromos underneath slightly. And it will just give it a tinge of colour, rather than it being just a grey. And if you use your pencil as if you were kind of feeling the fur, you're going to have more success in creating the soft fluff. Always have an idea of what the fur feels like when you're drawing it, because that will really, really help translating that feeling sort of down from your brain into the pencil. I think drawing fluffy animals actually is a real favourite of mine. I don't prefer drawing any particular type of animal. I love drawing all of them, but I don't know whether it's because it's more of a challenge to draw fluff, although saying that it is a real challenge to draw like really shiny, sleek fur. But I don't know. I really do like drawing these the texture and everything that you get within this type of fur. And I think as well, maybe it's a case of, you know, you can kind of hide little errors and stuff in something like this. Whereas if you've got a really smooth coat, you know, on a horse or a dog or something like that, and you go a little bit wrong, sometimes it can be a bit harder to cover it up. Right, so let's just get a bit more colour in here now that we've got those fluffy bits in. Let's just get a little bit more colour in. Okay, so we've got some this is just a really light wash of colour over the top. Just to give it that sort of tinge of colour. This is the yellow ochre, the lightfast yellow ochre, so I'm just going to run over these areas here really, really lightly. And it's so subtle, but it does make a difference. Right, I'm going to go back to the violet grey, and I've decided that these are too light. There's some areas that are quite highlighty, but not all of them, and this is in shadow, so I just need to knock these back a little bit. I'll leave these lighter, but these ones need to be knocked back a tad. So it's good to sort of squint at your reference photo as well, because that just knocks out all of the detail for you and shows you where all of the dark areas are, the dark and the light areas are. So you can see straight away where you need to kind of darken your drawing, you know, where you need to sort of strengthen those shadows. I just need to darken little areas of this bit up. Okay, so just going to just lighten this area in here, touch. Just knock back those oranges a little bit. That's it, and I think what I'll do is I'll use the lightfast oyster, which is a very light pink, and I'm just going to pop some of that in, and then I'm going to scrape away some of the hairs just to leave bright white, but this is just going to tone that orange down a little bit. I want to keep some of this rough texture though. I don't want it all to be smooth, so I need to be quite careful when I'm putting pencils like the Luminance and the lightfast on, because they really will smooth out what you've got going. Right, and then I'm just going to come in and just add a bit of hair texture there. You can see there where it's just, like I was saying before, it's just pulled the pigment out onto the paper, so just be aware of that and then just pop it out. And then just back in here and when you've got the shapes in there to fill in with shadows and stuff, it's really not that tricky. It's just about knowing, you know, which shapes to put where. the Caput Mortuum Violet into this area here, and just add some of that subtle colour just into here. And down into this area, and then into here. Right, so just a quick smooth over with the warm grey too, literally just almost using it to burnish, but I'm not burnishing because I'm using such light pressure, but all it does is it kind of consolidates everything and just starts to blend everything a little bit, but not to the point where it's all blurry. Right. Okay. Well, I'm fairly happy with that. Yeah. We can come back and tweak it if we need to. But I think for now that's one ear done.